Welcome everyone to the first episode of our four-part webinar series, Estimate Better with BIM. This webinar series is focused on helping you understand the power of BIM in the context of quantification and cost estimation, and how to best leverage this within the CostX software. My name is Ben Baker. I'm a senior consultant with RIB CostX. I've been in the construction industry for about 20 years, with 4 years as a commercial estimator using CostX. I've been working with RIB for about 3 years, and I'm from Minnesota in the United States. In today's episode, I will cover object duplication, quality checks, and drawing sets. I'll show how duplicates can be found and what to do with them, along with other model quality checks and creating that drawing set. In upcoming episodes, we'll explore how to import dimensions using BIM templates for more accurate measurements, improving your project workflow. We'll also cover model maps and dive into BIM revisions, helping you stay on top of updates and changes throughout the project. If any of these topics interest you, please register so you don't miss out. For those of you who are not aware, RIB CostX has been in the market for over 20 years. Empowering quantity surveyors and estimators to produce accurate estimates through powerful digital takeoff, live linked estimation, and customizable reporting. In the fast-moving world of construction, staying ahead means using tools that make life easier and projects more efficient. BIM is one of those tools, transforming how projects are planned, built, and delivered. And with RIB CostX, you can really unlock the power of how BIM can streamline your estimating and takeoff processes. So what are the benefits of BIM paired with CostX? Accurate data-driven estimates. Being able to extract detailed quantities straight from the 3D models with automatic updates as design changes. Seamless collaboration, where you can work together with your team from different locations on an up-to-date project, minimizing miscommunication and reducing rework. Enhanced visualization, where you can see complex designs in 3D as you work, helping you make better decisions with fewer errors. And future-proofing your projects. Stay competitive and compliant as BIM becomes the industry standard. CostX is a 2D and 3D estimating and takeoff platform. Not only can you import your 2D drawings and maintain the file type, you can import the 3D models as well. The quantities extracted from those models and performed on the 2D drawings are live linked to your estimate, which then can be printed off into a client-facing report. With models, there's always some information that could lead to duplicates, where you will have to double-check those quantities to make sure they're accurate. In today's webinar, I'm going to go over how to find those duplicates and understand what they are, whether they are true duplicates and we don't have to worry about them affecting our estimate, as CostX won't double them up, or if they're false duplicates and we'll end up having to do some manual takeoff to account for those duplicates themselves. The quality checks I'll be going over throughout the webinar are just ways that you can try to look at the objects designed to understand if there are additional information that you will have to require or ask for, or if you'll have to manually perform some measurements to make sure it's accurate. And then the drawing sets. They work with DWFX models and the drawing sheets. Not only do they tie the model to the 2D drawings, but any object that you perform takeoff with from a model, you can see that on the 2D drawing through the drawing set itself. Let's hop over to CostX and we'll take a look at how it all works. Okay, now that we're in CostX, we're going to take a look at a couple models that I have. These are DWFX models, and they were exported from Revit. And along with the models, we also have the DWFX sheets, which will come into play when we create a drawing set. Now, the drawing sets are a good way to double check your quantities extracting from the model. So it's always good to ask the architect if you can get a DWFX model. Not only is it easier to use in CostX, it doesn't take as much resources as, let's say, a native Revit file would. We do have a drawing file optimization guide as well that we can provide you, which goes over different model file types and different ways that CostX can utilize the different features based on the model that's provided. Now, when I open the first model here, the architectural model, I get this warning. It's for duplicate object IDs, and it basically tells you what those are and how to find them by importing a BIM template. Now, I will be covering this import duplicates only template and one other today. There will be another webinar in this series that covers more of these import templates and how they operate, but we're going to be focusing on the duplicates and then some quality checks that we can do when looking at these models. So first things first, when it comes to CostX and what it can do with the models that are imported in, is all the properties assigned to the objects. Now, when you right click on an object, this exterior wall, for example, and look at the object properties, this is what we're given. Some basic information, some detail about where it's coming from and what family and categories it was using, and then more information down below. Now, when we want to extract something, there's two different ways to do that. A BIM template, which again we'll be covering in a later webinar in the series, or a model map, which will also be covered in that webinar. But first, what we're going to do is take a look at those duplicates that we saw that warning message for. Now, when you extract or when you go to the BIM import templates to extract, this is the one we'll be using. These templates are provided to you in your installation folder, so you'll have access to them right away. The other template I'll be covering today is this grouped by second level, and I'll explain why it's grouped by a second level and what that means versus the normal one, which we would normally use if you don't have a federated model. So let's open up the duplicates only template and we'll let this go through that model. It is searching all of the objects right now to look at the different IDs for each of those objects, and then we'll create a folder for us so we can understand that. Now, the first thing that pops up is this use default unit inches for length. Now, this is a metric model, and it's using an imperial unit to define the actual unit itself for the quantity. What this means is this m squared here for meter squared was assigned by the architect or designer who created this model, whereas some of the quantities, if we scroll over to the right, don't have units of measure. So you are able to manually assign those units if you want to by clicking on the units here and then picking the correct unit of measure you want to use. Otherwise, the system will default to what it assumes is the correct unit. Now, right away, what we're looking at in this folder, there are 4 different objects. There's a roof, a couple of chairs, about 4 of them, a dining table, and a slab edge. So I'm going to select the whole folder, and we're going to right click and isolate that folder so it only shows us on the drawing window here, this gray box, the drawing window, what objects we have taken off in this folder. Now, I do have ghost view on, so if we go to drawings here, you can see I have that transparent or ghost outline of the building itself. You can turn that off if you prefer. You can also make things transparent. That way, if you have the entire model selected, so if I were to show all right here, you'd see just what's inside of the building instead of having it be filled in. So there's different ways that you can view this information depending on how you want to work with it. But what we're going to look at is why we have duplicates for these objects. And the first one we'll take a look at here is the roof itself. Now, 17,146 square feet for the area. If I were to right click on that and view the object properties, we can see that this ID here, this 140056, that's the ID that it's looking at. So if I were to right click once more and hide the geometry, where you can press H on your keyboard as a quick key to hide it as well, we can try to see what is there as a duplicate. Now the middle mouse button lets you pan around, and it looks like what I have here is the wireframe for the roof. So if I were to hover over that again, it has 17,146 for the square footage. That's object properties from right clicking, and it has that 140056 for that ID. With the same properties, that was attached to the one that we just hidden. So this is in fact a true duplicate. And because it was flagged as a duplicate, if you were to expand this extended ellipsis here on the bottom, you'll open up the schedule. You'll see CostX created this duplicate column due to running that BIM template. And we know now that this is a true duplicate and it won't double up those quantities for us. So that's always an added benefit when running that duplicate template, just to make sure that you're not doubling up on something by mistake. So let's take a look at the slab edge, and we can press the H key on the keyboard to hide that. Middle mouse button to deselect everything just to look at it all, and does have that wireframe just as the roof did. Same thing for this slab edge as well, has that wireframe assigned with the same object properties as the other one. Now let's take a look at the chairs and the table. It says there's 4 chairs, but we can see that there's quite a few chairs here. Let's zoom in a little bit. And when we look at the actual chair itself, it looks like one object is controlling all of them. So we have one object here for the south, for the east, the south, the west, and the north. It's all controlling one object, even though it's showing multiple chairs. Same thing for the table. If we look at that, it's controlling one object for all of the tables and chairs. So this is an example of a false duplicate, which we would then have to go through and count manually. So the reason this is happening, let's go to the model tree and I'll talk a little bit about why. The first thing I notice in this model tree is that we have a drawing folder or a category here. We have an Autodesk University architectural model and a cafe furniture model. Now, this is a federated model, meaning there's 2 models in one. A good example would be plumbing, MEP, structural, architectural models all combined into one model to make it a federated model, simply allowing you to see more elements of the project in one location. Now, the architect who created this Autodesk University or Apple University used what's called a Revit link. It's essentially a hyperlink to an object that he can reference and reuse as many times as he needs or she needs to create this environment. A good example of this would be a stadium, a ballpark, any type of auditorium where there's hundreds or thousands of different seats. They may use a Revit link to show the different seats in that model. And CostX unfortunately flags that as a duplicate object because there's only 4 objects here. It was only used 4 times, and that link was reused multiple times. So the object itself has only been used once. So it's always a good idea or good practice to look at what these duplicates are when your model tells you you have them, just to make sure you're not missing something. For example, these tables, if we expand the schedule, they actually provided pricing for these. They're $300 a piece, and we would only have counted one of them if we relied on that BIM template. Same thing for the chairs. They're about $45 a piece. So it really kind of just depends on how the model was designed and how you're going to do, go through that and look at what this information is. All right, so we're going to take a look at a couple more things here. And what I would like to do is we're just going to right click anywhere in the display window or the drawing window and show all the objects once more. And the next section I would like to show you is this canopy area. Now I have this tree in the way, so I'll just press H to hide that. And we're going to focus on these columns here. The other thing you can do here, we'll right click and we can show only objects in the 450 millimeter for these specific columns. Now it shows me there's 6. This is based off of a level structure of the object properties itself. Level 1 is the model it's stored in, the family or category, the subcategory or the type, what is the object classification, and then the actual object itself. So this object 201.281 is the one we currently have right-clicked on. So you can isolate that one specifically, or we can highlight the entire group and see only those. So we do have these 6 columns here. Now I do have a structural model. It's another DWFX. This one is imperial instead of using metric. So we're going to take a look at that one next, just to compare the two, because sometimes when you get federated models, or when you get one architectural model with structural elements, it's always a good idea to compare and make sure that the information you're provided is accurate. So we're going to hide or show these only. These are classified as 30-inch diameter, which there's 7 of them. So right away we have a miscount. So I'm going to lean more towards the structural model because it was designed with structure in mind, not the architectural model, just to show what the canopy would look like and have some of those foundation columns in there. The other thing to note is that these are 30 inches. So if we look at that, it says they're 30 inches in diameter, whereas these are 450 millimeters. So when you do the conversion from millimeters to inches, 450 millimeters is roughly 18 inches wide or so. So it's going to be a pretty big difference. That's almost half the size. So again, making sure that the information you're looking at is correct, doing the double check, not just relying on what the architect has provided you, but making sure the information is accurate before you run with the quantities that are being extracted. The other thing we are going to take a look at is we're going to go back to the model tree of the structure model here, and we're going to take a look at these pile caps. Now, the pile caps themselves are drawn to what I believe is correct. The only thing that may cause an issue is if we look at the floor as well, the slab here, we can see that the pile caps are actually drawn to the top of the floor. So if you find the sweet spot here, it will actually highlight that. There it is. So you can see that pile cap goes directly to the top of the floor. So without measuring that, I don't know if the floor is accounting for that pile cap or vice versa. The pile cap is accounting for the floor. Maybe there could be a double up there in that little space. So it's always a good idea to check to make sure that the quantities you're extracting, even though they look to be correct, is actually correct. All right, the last thing here I want to talk about is drawing sets. Now, drawing sets are a good way to basically double check the quantities being extracted from the model itself. And as I mentioned, DWFX sheets that were exported with the DWFX model is the only way that you're able to utilize a drawing set. So I'm going to create one now, and we'll show what that looks like and how it works. Basically, you insert a new one. We'll just call this drawing set example. And we're going to select the model that we want to use. I'll use the architectural in this case. And the first few floors. Click insert to that. Now that that drawing set's created, we can delete it. We can insert a whole new one, base it off of structural drawing sets. If you have a separate structural model like I do, or an MEP model with MEP drawings, you can have those drawing sets separated, or you can add them by editing it again and adding the information that you want. So this unassigned drawings node here will let you select the ones that haven't been assigned yet, or you can click on all and deselect the drawings that you don't want on there anymore. So different ways to utilize this drawing set. But basically, as I mentioned before, it allows you to see the takeoff that's being extracted from the model itself. So I'm going to go back here and we're going to take a look at doors. So we have our doors, and I'm going to run a BIM template. Now the BIM template will only work with visible objects, and this little pop-up here confirms that data will only be imported for visible objects. Do you want to proceed? Yes, in this case I do, but it's important to note that any item that you want to quantify that isn't visible or has been hidden will not be quantified. So you'll have to run that BIM template again. Now I am going to use this second level of the model tree that I mentioned earlier. And the reason for that is because this is a federated model, we have two separate models here, this Autodesk University and the Cafe Furniture. That's telling me that every node has been shifted. So a normal model that doesn't have anything else tied to it would have drawing and then just the subfolders here. Whereas this one has two models, so it's showing me level 1 as the actual model itself. So we're going to use the second level, which is going to extract this folder. So if I'm looking at doors, it's going to create a folder called doors. Very basic explanation. Again, there'll be another webinar in the series going over the templates and what you can do with them, along with model maps and how those operate. All right, so again, using a default unit of measure for the height and the width, I'm okay with that. We're just measuring some doors here for the count. Here's that doors folder I mentioned, and we have all of our doors. Now, because there's a drawing set tied to the model and the drawings, when we go to the ground floor, we will see those doors transposed to the 2D drawing. And that's what's going to help us confirm or basically vet out that model itself, run that BIM template or model map to extract the quantities the way you want them to be, and double check the 2D drawing. That way, if anything's missing, you can pick it up manually here in the drawing and have some of your work done for you through import process using a BIM template or that model map. I hope you enjoyed today's information on drawing sets and object duplication. Please feel free to ask us any questions within the chat box, or alternatively send your inquiry via our Contact Us webpage. If your questions are not answered today, our regional team will contact you directly. Our next episode of the series covers importing dimensions using BIM templates and object measurement. Register now so you don't miss out. Interested in upskilling in other topics beyond BIM? Subscribe to our regular CostX Coffee Break webinar series on YouTube. We release new topics monthly to help you maximize your CostX experience. Thanks again for watching.